What's up, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, or, of course, if you are watching on our fast-growing YouTube channel, that is Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me, as he always does, for yet another episode of the UNC Football Show, our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And AJ, yet again, another exciting show ahead. Obviously going to be previewing Carolina's matchup in Wallace-Wade Stadium against Duke this Saturday, 8 p.m. kickoff. That game will be on ACC Network. Before that, we'll kind of dive into some game week storylines, vibes, and all that, as AJ's been at all the press conferences this week. And a quick note, too, before we dive into it, we usually run this one on Wednesday evenings, but because AJ was in Charlotte yesterday for the ACC basketball tip-off, which if you want to see coverage from that, interviews, check our YouTube channel and TarHeelIllustrated.com. AJ and Brandon were over there and did a fantastic job. So we're recording this one on Thursday evening. A little bit different, be rolling it late Thursday. Just wanted to put that out there. We didn't forget about it. We didn't forget about you guys. Just had to call an audible to reference a football play here, AJ, and do it a little differently than we usually.
And we'll have a basketball discussion coming up as well. So
got a basketball one. So we're doing a couple of Thursday evening podcasts, as I just said. So guys, just wanted to let you guys in on that. And again, keep it locked to TarHeelIllustrated.com for all your coverage from the ACC tip-off yesterday. So AJ, yeah, like I said, it's an exciting matchup, another exciting show ahead, and looking forward to kind of diving into it a little bit. Duke sitting at 4-2, 1-1 in ACC play, third in the Coastal. Losses coming to Kansas and Georgia Tech. UNC, of course, sitting at 5-1, 2-0, currently first place in the Coastal Division right now. So AJ, as we always do, I kind of like to look back before we look ahead and preview the matchup a little bit and just kind of talk about some of the press conferences and kind of the game week storylines from this week. Carolina feeling pretty good. Should be feeling really good coming off two straight Coastal Division wins over Virginia Tech and Miami. So, AJ, when you look back to Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, some of the press conferences, talked to a bunch of players, talked to the coordinators and Mac twice. What's kind of the vibe around the program right now? Because I think it's pretty easy to see this Carolina team seems to be full of confidence. Program seems to be feeling really good. And I think they're looking forward to traveling over to Duke and looking to improve to 3-0 in conference play.
I think it's a really opportunistic scenario for Mac and the staff that they're 5-1, 2-0 in the league, so they have a ton to play for, right? But man, they got a lot to fix. Mm-hmm. So they're able to get the kids' attention to fix a lot of stuff. I mean, if we were to itemize all that needs to be fixed and all that can be better, it would be pretty lengthy. And I think that puts them in a good place because coaches want to coach, they want to teach. They're teachers, right? And they want to push to get better. But if you can do that when you got a 5 in the W column and a 1 in the L column, and you're out front in the Coastal Division, that's a great place to be. And I think what the last 2 weeks tells us is that this team, in spite of all of its warts, in spite of its youth, in spite of being banged up in some key spots here lately, in spite of the fact that there is so much growing for almost every position group to do, including even tight end, that they're still winning games. They're 3-0 on the road. And they've, as much as the defense has been maligned, all 3 wins on the road required the defense to make plays late and get them a W. It wasn't just Sam and company. I think the way this game played out last weekend at Miami was perfect for this group's development, not just this team, but the program, because they're still trying to cement culture. And the culture needs to be making the play. Remember the slogan when Matt came back, be the one? Well, we started to see last week on defense some guys step up and have be the one moments. We've seen it on offense. But defense complemented the offense some. I know they gave up a crap load of yards, but in the end, all that matters is how many points you give up. Yeah. And for this team to win a game in which Drake threw 2 interceptions, they scored just 2 field goals in the second half, and they allowed 496 yards passing, and they still won. That is culture building. That is where guys buy into the intangibles, buy into stay with it, and Cedric Gray is going to keep a guy in bounds. It's going to panic the offense, and they're going to throw a pick to DeAndre Boykins, game over. That's what they've learned. Now they got to shore up all that stuff in between, all the other stuff. So they have a chance to get a lot better and to get a lot better off a 5-1 record and 3-0 on the road tells me that this team is starting to show that it's got a very, very high ceiling. We all thought it had a pretty high ceiling, but I think it's got a very high ceiling. And I think they're starting to see that. It's one thing for them to say it in August. It's one thing for coaches to tell them they can be really good. And Max said multiple times in August, quote, "We can be really good," end quote. Now they're starting to see it, and they're starting to see what it takes. They're a long way away from being really good, a long way away. But this week at Duke is part of the process in becoming really, really good. And that requires taking some of those moments, those be the one moments, and increasing the number of be the one moments on the defensive side of the ball. Pretty much continue being what they are on offense, but run the ball a little bit better. And they start stacking that stuff, and you never know. By November, maybe they are really good. They have a chance to be that way, and I think that they all recognize that now. The mood at the Keenan Football Center, Jacob, is totally different than it was this time a couple of weeks ago. Totally different, and for good reason.
Night and day. I mean, it has to be, and it was so evident. It's so evident. Just go watch Mac's press conference after the Notre Dame game, and then go watch his press conferences after, particularly not Virginia Tech, a little bit more upbeat, particularly after the Miami win, with just how they did it, how they won, and how the defense has improved. Like I said, it's night and day. AJ, I want to talk about the defense really quickly before we kind of move on. I know we've hit on them a lot this year, and I think we've had some podcasts where we've really criticized them, and not unfairly. We've really sat here and discussed and tried to figure out, okay, what are the issues on the defensive side of the ball, particularly. I believe in our pre-Virginia Tech UNC football show, we really kind of dove into them for like 20 minutes and kind of talked about it. Since then, we've seen improvements. Again, still giving up a lot of yards against Miami. Like you said, it's a very, we talked about it in the three things after the game. It's very Gene Chizik-esque, bend, don't break at its finest is what I like to call it, because you're still giving up a good amount of yards, but you're not letting other teams score. You're holding Miami to 24 points. You'll take that all day long. And AJ, this team in a lot of ways, statistically, reminds me of the Clemson team last year. And what I mean by that, there was a long stretch last year where Clemson, in terms of ACC total offense and total defense rankings, Clemson had the best defense in the ACC, just like Carolina has the best offense in the ACC. And they were dead last in offense, just like Carolina's dead last in defense right now. And that's really just in terms of yards per game, because, I think Max said it at a press conference a couple of weeks ago, like Carolina statistically in that category is not really going to improve because they let up so many yards, 600 plus against App State. And they had so many big yardage games early in the year where trying to bring that number down is going to be so hard to do because of those big games that they had. But like you said, there has been improvement. We hit on it on Monday night a little bit. I think I asked you about it during our Twitter space on our at Heel Illustrated on our Twitter in terms of more, there's more guys playing on the defensive line. There's more rotation. Max talked about how that has led to a little bit better of a vibe in the defensive line room, a little bit more energy and a little bit more attention to detail in practice from those guys, because, hey, they're sitting there saying, okay, I don't have to just practice all week just to go play one snap. I'm going to actually get on the field a lot and have a chance to shine. And that's a huge boost for not only players' confidence, but for their morale going into it. So for me, that's played a big factor. You've seen some improved play from the secondary. I still think they need to improve a little bit. Cedric Gray and Power Echols have done a really nice job, particularly Cedric Gray at those linebacker positions. AJ, when you look at this defense as a whole and kind of what we've seen from game one against FAMU to, last week against game 6 against Miami, what for you in terms of tangible improvements have you seen? Because like I said, I think you can pick a lot of different things, but for me, it seems like when the D-line rotation really got notched up a little bit and you started seeing more guys play, you also started seeing Carolina stop the run a little bit better, get a little more pressure on the quarterback, and that just seemed to make the defense a little bit better as a whole.
Well, one of the reasons they were pretty deep on the defensive line Saturday at Miami was the humidity. It was raining off and on for about 2 hours before I got to really up until about a half hour before kickoff.
I meant to ask you about that in our three things. I was curious to know what the weather was like there during the game.
Well, when I got dropped off by my Uber, it's still like about a 7-minute walk. I was shooting some videos to the tailgate, which is quite an experience there. It's not a bad experience.
Go to our Twitter if you want to see those videos.
Yeah, another topic for another day. But it had just finished raining, and you could almost feel the air thicken.
Yeah.
And it was warm. So they dug down to Keyshawn Silverman. And, Keyshawn hasn't gotten the weight entirely down. And my understanding was that they weren't really going to use him until he did, but they didn't have Ray Vahasek. Miles Murphy is still banged up with the ankle and limited. He did give him 25 snaps, I think. He only played 10 against Virginia Tech. So they had to dig. They got 30-something snaps from Kevin Hester, which is more than they would usually plan on using him. Travis Shaw gave him some snaps. So they were able to dig deep, and they got some pretty good play. So you asked, to answer your question, I think run defense has definitely improved. Keyshawn made those 2 plays inside the 5-yard line on the goal line stamp as a series. That was huge. It's got to be enormous for his confidence. Sometimes that's what you need. Sometimes that's the light that goes on for a guy. And we'll see this weekend how much he plays and how effective that he is against a team that's going to be physical up front with the Tar Heels. So I think the run defense has improved. The numbers say that. They've given up 141 yards on the ground the last 2 games, but Virginia Tech is an anemic offense, and Miami hasn't been great running the ball yet. And Miami basically quit running the ball the other day. They only ran it 6 times in the second half. I think Van Dyke threw 52 times for the game, which is one of the reasons he threw for 496 yards. But they were still effective. They ran it 6 times for 7 yards. So one of the reasons that they threw a lot was Carolina made them one-dimensional. So for this team to actually dictate something on that side of the ball for the first time this year, I think is significant. It's very significant because there are a lot of quarterbacks in this league that can't beat you with their arm. Van Dyke's one of them that can, and he still didn't do it, even when Carolina's offense wasn't popping. So I think that that's a great sign. The other thing is they're starting to get more of a pass rush. They forced Van Dyke to move a lot the other day, and it's conventional pass rush. They only blitzed 4 times. They got a lot out of them. They had the corner blitz with Grimes. They had the blitz with Boykins on 4th down that got a sack, but they had 11 hurries, and they were conventional hurries. Des Evans got close a couple of times. Rucker always gets to the quarterback at least once a game. And you're getting some of the interior guys that are getting good push and forcing the quarterback to move into hurry situations. So they said this week, Gene and Macba said that the pass rush is ahead of the pass coverage. So I think that's kind of where this group is. They need to cover better. And maybe if they gain more trust in the corners, we'll see the corners move up a little bit in pre-snap. They are playing way off the ball. We've been asked that in the Twitter space a couple of times about it. I've been asked that on the board. I do think a lot of that is trust in those corners. Keep everything in front of you. Don't give up the big play, because I don't think that the staff fully believes that Grimes and Duck could cover on a regular basis yet, or they would be a little bit more press coverage. But as you said, Jacob, Gene Chizik is a bend but don't break guy to a degree. It's more don't give up the catastrophic, and a result of that philosophy appears to be bend. But it's not like he says, hey, let's give up 80 yards every possession, but no touchdowns.
No. It's
a philosophy, and a byproduct of that philosophy sometimes is you give up a 50-play drive and a field goal instead of a touchdown. And that's, in this day and age, giving up a field goal is winning football. Touchdowns are being scored all over the place. So to answer your question, I would say the run defense and getting a more conventional pass rush from up front.
It's huge. We always said it. Football starts in the trenches. One more thing on the defense, too, just to ask you this. We haven't really talked about this at all, but I think this has to play a factor, too. How much of the defense improvement do you put down to just getting more used to in game situations what Gene Chizik's trying to do and the new defensive coaches and everything? Do you think that is maybe played a little bit of a factor, too?
Yeah, I do, because earlier in the year when we would ask the guys what the problem was, both from the front line and a linebacker, they would say, well, the guys weren't lining up in the right place. Yeah. You're at a 30 instead of a 20 or something like that, which that determines where a linebacker lines up. And sometimes a linebacker may go, he's supposed to line up over the tackle, but the lineman's there. It's like, wait a second, that doesn't make sense, because you have to have your gaps and everything. So that's part of it. I think that they're better at that. Mac said earlier this week that, they feel like they're coaching better. Well, I think they're coaching better. You can only coach or teach as well as someone wants to learn, right? So if the players' minds are looser and freer and less cluttered, which I think is a result of the meeting that the defense had the day after the Notre Dame game, they're going to be easier to teach because they're more receptive. So I think a lot of that's gone on the last couple of weeks, and they've improved in a lot of the cerebral things because they aired things out and the players' minds are less cluttered. Therefore, they're more receptive to what's being taught. They're more receptive also to the idea of accountability you're going to be taught better if you know there's accountability based on what you learn and then go out in the field and employ. So I think a lot of that's going on right now.
100%. It's just human nature in a lot of ways. You got to get more comfortable.
Big time.
You get more comfortable with what
is.
you're doing. Yeah, it really is. We talk about it all the time.
I don't care whether it's real estate or art, or if you're a financial guy, whatever it is, man. Human nature finds its way into everything, and the same thing with sports.
Yeah,
and I think we've seen a lot of that the last couple of weeks around this program.
No doubt. The more comfortable you are doing something, the better you usually do it. So no doubt about that. AJ, before we move on to the Duke preview, I just want to give a quick shout out once again to our sponsor. They sponsored us throughout all of our UNC football shows going back. I believe this is our 8th episode in total. Could be wrong on that, but I think it's our 8th episode in total, 8th or 9th episode in total. You guys know we love them, myperfectfranchise.net. So guys, I'm gonna list a few things. If these things apply to you and you can relate to this, we've got a perfect opportunity for you. If you're looking to diversify, looking to leave the corporate rat race, to gain control of your income, most importantly, your schedule, what about having unlimited PTO and the ability to create income and wealth? Well, guys, you can do that here with myperfectfranchise.net. The founder and owner, Andy Ludicky, great friend of ours, long-term Rivals member, diehard college football fan, and a franchise veteran as well. He's owned multiple franchises and businesses throughout his professional career. So what he does is, using his expertise and vast experience, he helps others find their American dream through a thorough and very free consultation process. So guys, you ever driven around, see these, no matter what the economy is doing, you see these franchises popping up everywhere, restaurants, retailers, whatever it may be. You always wondered, hey, how do you go about opening one of those? You can do that here at myperfectfranchise.net. And again, you can call Andy, put your life and career in your own hands, and it's 100% free for that consultation, guys. So what do you really have to lose? Like I said, if those things kind of apply to you, I think it's a great time to do so. You've been thinking about kind of a career switch. What can I do? I kind of want to make my own schedule and do my own thing. You can do that with myperfectfranchise.net, and having Andy along to not only give you that consultation, but if you decide to do it, to guide you and help you along the way, is just such a big advantage that you'll have in terms of doing that. And I'm gonna throw this in here as I always do, AJ. Massive Mac Brown fan. So if you do end up talking to him, make sure you tell him TarHeelIllustrated.com sent you. Love them, guys. MyPerfectFranchise.net. Link is in the description below. Go and talk to Andy if this is something you're interested in. Fantastic company, fantastic guy, and really looking forward to continue to partner with them moving forward. All right, AJ, let's dive into the matchup a little bit more. As I kind of always do, I'm going to run through some stats on Duke from this year so far, and then we'll kind of dive into some keys to victory and predictions here in a little bit. But mentioned it earlier, Duke 4-2, 1-1 in ACC play, 3rd in the Coastal Division right now. Losses to Kansas and Georgia Tech, wins over Temple, at Northwestern, NC&T, and Virginia. Diving into him a little bit more specifically, under first-year coach Mike Elko. Some might remember him a couple of years ago from the Orange Bowl. He was a former defensive coordinator at Texas A&M. Looking at Duke statistically right now as a whole, sitting at number 9 in the ACC in total offense, about 2,500 yards on the season, averaging 416.5 yards per game. Defense kind of in the same category. When you dive into a little bit more, their defense ranks 4th in the ACC in scoring defense, limiting their opponents to just 19.7 points per game and holding half of their opponents to less than 20 first downs. I'll throw a caveat in there, because if you look at who Duke's played, even some of the other games, Temple's not good. Northwestern's really struggling this year. A&T's struggling this year. Even a win over Virginia, they're struggling as well. Losses to Kansas and Georgia Tech too, who I know Kansas is having a pretty good year, but these are not juggernauts. So I think you do have to kind of factor that into some of those stats. But another interesting thing that I think we're going to continue to monitor, and we might not know a lot more until Saturday evening. It's a banged up football team right now. They have some injury issues, some concerns as well. Leading rusher Jalen Coleman actually didn't play against Georgia Tech. I have heard either him or Jalen Calhoun, who's their leading receiver, who also went out in the Georgia Tech game. I've heard one of them is supposed to play. I can't remember who it is, or is expected to play. And they're also missing a couple players on the offensive line as well. So particularly on that offensive side of the ball, I know they got some backup linebackers and defensive backs that have also kind of been in and out of the rotation with some injuries. So this is a banged up football team, and definitely something to consider going into the game. I'm going to dive in just a little bit more specifics on the offense. First-year quarterback Riley Leonard's 3rd in the ACC in pass completion percentage. He's also run for 289 yards on 50 carries. He's one of Duke's leading rushers this year. That's something that Carolina's going to have to be wary of because we've definitely seen some running quarterbacks, absolutely torch Carolina over the years. I think it's going to be a big factor in the game. Also got some deep threat receivers with two of their top receivers averaging over 15 yards per catch. Diving into the defense, Darius Joyner, defensive back, leads the team in tackles with 46. Shaka Hayward and Jalen Stinson. Hayward's a linebacker. Stinson's a defensive back right behind him with 38 tackles a pop. And then Jamion Franklin, defensive tackle, leads the team with 2.5 sacks. So, AJ, this is, in a lot of ways, this is a Duke program that struggled over the last couple of years under Cutcliffe. But when you look at what they've done so far this year, their record and how they've kind of done so far going into it, it's a program that's on the rebound and is doing some really nice things under first-year coach Mike Elko. And I'm sure a lot of people are pretty pleased with what they've seen so far. So, AJ, when you look at this Duke team, when you look at the challenge ahead, playing in Wallace Wade Stadium, you talked to me about it before we even got on here, saying this is the first time since Matt came back that Carolina has played in Wallace Wade with a crowd, which is kind of hard to believe because of COVID and everything like that. What are just your overall thoughts on the challenge that awaits with this Duke football team specifically?
Yeah, the last time they played over there when there was a crowd was when Daniel Jones ran all over them, and Larry was the coach, and that was the maybe they're not that close
not
column that, I wrote after that game that resonated, to say the least.
To say the least, yeah.
When I record all the games, all the ACC games, and especially the teams. Because at this point in time, the teams that Carolina plays for sure, I record their games. And when I watched the Temple game, it took two series on both sides of the ball, and I thought, wow, they're more physical. They're different. So I watch more, and every time, they're different. They're not always really good. Sometimes you can see their lack of skill at times. Not great depth, obviously. Duke's not often had great depth, but they're physical and they know what they're doing and they know what they want to do. They already know who they are. We're seeing some first-year coaches in the league really struggle. Tony Elliott's having a terrible time up at UVA. That may not be a marriage that lasts very long. Because it doesn't appear that there's anything in place there. Mario Cristobal, I think, is, fighting against, recent history at Miami where change is tough. And you got to kind of go in there and deal with some of the dynamics of Miami. They're 2-3, but Mike Elko walked into a situation where he replaced a phenomenal coach that Duke had. Cutcliffe did an incredible job. Quite frankly, if they built a statue for him, I think it would make a lot of sense because they were so freaking bad when he took over. I mean, horrible. I covered a lot of those teams, and they were terrible.
They were bad.
And Cutcliffe made them more than respectable. Got to an ACC title game.
I know.
But the last couple of years, Duke fell off. And it was time for Cutcliffe to go, and I think he was kind of nudged out a little bit there. So Elko came in, and he's a defensive mind. I thought it was a really good hire by Duke to go the other direction, to bring in a defensive guy because they needed to get tougher, and they have. So that's what jumps out at me about this team is that they are more physical. So even with the guys, when you're listing all these dudes that are out or might not play, I'm thinking, okay, but they're still going to pop. And I think the key in this game is how does Carolina respond to just being popped every time the ball snaps? Tar Heels are going to get popped. Whether it's on special teams, you're going to get popped. Whether it's on offense, you're going to get popped. There's going to be a level of aggression that they're hit with Saturday night. They're going to have to respond to. So even if it's a guy who is a backup at Duke is on the field and he pops you, and he wins that exchange, and then he wins another exchange because he's popping, suddenly he becomes the better player. So I think Carolina has to be able to meet that early on and let Duke know we can play this physical stuff too. Because that's important, because Duke understands that's one of the ways it has to be able to win this game. So it has to be the more physical team. And if Carolina matches that, then it becomes a skill and talent versus talent thing. Carolina has a clear advantage there. So they have to meet the physicality. And the other thing is Riley Leonard, the great Connor O'Neill, who runs the Devils Illustrated site here in the Rivals Network. If you're a Duke fan listening to this and you don't know about Devils Illustrated, go to Devils Illustrated. It's in our Rivals Network. Connor does phenomenal work there. And we did a Q&A exchange, and he was talking about Riley Leonard, saying, look, Riley Leonard is a true dual threat quarterback. And he's a quarterback that plays with the physicality that we're talking about. Carolina fans know how tough Drake May is. And Drake's proven he's tough. Riley Leonard's the same kind of guy. Now, he's not Drake May, but he's a scaled down version. And I think he's been one of the best stories in the ACC so far. And he's a guy that sort of triggers the mindset of how Duke approaches things. He's the perfect dude to be the quarterback of the way Duke is transitioning under Mike Elko. So I think it's going to be fascinating to see how the Heels handle that and how do they deal with a feisty dual threat quarterback who can do a lot of stuff. He's got some weapons and he's a weapon himself. And we've seen in the past where quarterbacks who are weapons can give Carolina problems, especially ones that throw well and throw over the middle well, because that can freeze the linebackers some. And they need to have an eye on the quarterback. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Carolina handles third down situations if the linebackers get frozen.
Agreed. Yeah, those are kind of my, like we always do, hit on the keys to victory. You've kind of hit on yours there, but that's kind of my number one in terms of Carolina's defense key to victory. How do they handle Riley Leonard? You got to contain him, not only because he's, like I said, third in the ACC in pass completion percentage, pretty accurate quarterback in terms of when he delivers the football, but he's rushed for over 289 yards on 50 carries. So he's a guy that will get out of the pocket and can make his own play. I know that's something that Mac highlighted on Monday during his press conference as well. So that's kind of my key to victory on the defense. And then, offense, I don't necessarily have keys to victory on offense because it just seems like this offense is just such a well-oiled machine right now, even going back the past couple of years of what Phil Longo has been able to do there. So for me, it's just same old, same old. I always say you got to give Drake May time. If you can give him time back there to kind of do his thing, Carolina's going to succeed. But even building on that, what we saw a little bit better against Miami, establishing that early run game and also getting your running backs involved out of the pass game, I think is a big recipe for success for North Carolina. So those are my kind of two keys to victory for the Tar Heels on Saturday night. And I guess we'll see what happens. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me add one too. If they can match Duke's physicality out of the gate and then pop on some big touchdown plays, something like with J.J. Jones early at Miami, I thought that put Miami on its heels. If they could do that, they'll demoralize Duke and they'll beat them. And if there is a path for Carolina to win in a lopsided game, that's it right there. Yeah. Match their physicality and then pop on some big plays, especially early, and cruise in that direction.
Yeah, I agree. I completely agree. That's a good point. I like how you've talked about physicality. And you've covered a lot more games in the Duke-Carolina rivalry than I have, but I've been to a handful of games over the years, particularly in Wallace-Wade, and it's always a physical game, man. It really is. Duke always comes out fired up.
And I think it's going to be more now because it's not like Duke's going to be real physical because Carolina's there. Duke's going to be real physical because they're taking the football field, and they've been real physical all along. So this is who they are. It's not just who they are that week. This is who they are every week. And that's why it's not just a few punches. They're going to throw a lot, and figuratively throw a lot of punches at the Tar Heels, throw a lot of punches at the Tar Heels, and they need to respond. That's why, again, everything for me is I'm always just fascinated the different challenges and how the team I cover handles that. I think that'll be interesting to see how the Tar Heels handle that.
Great. I couldn't agree more, AJ. I think it's going to be a fun game to cover and kind of for a fan perspective too. I think sold out game at this point. 8 p.m. ACC Network primetime game over in Durham. I think it's going to be a really fun atmosphere
Chrome
to
helmets.
be a part of. Yeah, man. Chrome helmets again. I had to mention that. They're wearing the all-white uniforms with the chrome helmets. And from someone like me who's going to be on the field doing photo and video, I'm ecstatic about that because it's going to look really sweet under the lights. So excited to see some of the stuff we get out of that. But AJ, real quickly before we
their blue helmets are among the best helmets in college football. And they've worn the current blue helmet once this year.
I know. I love the blue helmets, man. I really do.
I don't understand. I could deal with the chrome every once in a while.
Yeah.
At least they're wearing all white. That ought to look pretty cool. Mm-hmm. But guys, wear the blue helmets. That's who they are.
I agree.
The white helmets suck compared to the blue helmets.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I love the blue helmets. I think I've heard so many people say it. Carolina Blues probably the best, if not the best, one of the best, colors in college football.
Well, just the helmet with the interlock against it's a beautiful
Argyle's on there as well. It is a really nice helmet.
They don't wear enough Carolina blue, in my opinion. They've got an easy brand. It's an easy brand. Everybody knows it. They run away from it too much. And you got to embrace it. Be who you are. Just because you put on dark pants doesn't mean the guys are going to play tougher.
No, I'm just, like I said, I'm just glad they're not wearing
white helmets don't do it.
I'm just glad they're not wearing navy pants on Saturday.
And the thing about college football, everybody changes their uniforms all the time. They play 12 games.
I know. Yeah.
You don't need to change that much.
Yeah. I wonder how much of recruiting's a factor on it. I know it plays a factor. You don't think so? You don't think it's like, oh, look at our cool helmets?
Maryland would go to the Rose Bowl every year.
That's true. That's a heck of a point right there. Because like you do think of an Alabama or some of the, those programs, they never wear anything different. It's the same.
It'll pique kids' interest, but once they get into the recruiting process, it means absolutely nothing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Carolina is helped by the Jordan brand because the brand is part of the culture. Mm-hmm. So that's different. But that stuff's, there's not one kid that's going to go to Carolina because they're wearing chrome helmets.
That's a good point. That's a heck of a point.
Yeah, zero.
Looks cool on Instagram and Twitter, but no, it's not going to make you just come.
It's going to look cool on TV.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, they've gotten a lot of social media press this week over it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, they have. Anytime they whip out those chrome helmets.
I'm okay with it. I know that I come off as a get off my lawn guy, and I kind of am a get off my lawn guy. I admit that. I think it's okay every once in a while, but they just change way too often, and they don't wear the blue helmets enough. They should have worn the blue helmets in Miami last weekend.
I do agree with the Carolina blue helmets. I love the Carolina blue helmets, and I do agree. Like I said, the white helmets are okay, but if I'm picking that Carolina blue helmet, to me, every 10 times out of 10 over the white, that's just my preference, and I know you agree with it as well.
Where the stormtroopers once, wear the chrome once, wear the Carolina blue the rest of the time, and wear the 100%. Current one, not the throwbacks from the 90s. The numbers are really lumpy and ugly on those uniforms.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Like I said, I've always been a big fan of the of just Carolina's blue, white uniform, or I guess with away would be what blue, white, blue is kind of their typical away uniform. And like I said, I go blue helmet every time. But
you didn't plan on talking uniforms.
No, we definitely
talking uniforms, did you?
Definitely did, man. I'm a fan of the chrome helmets. Like I said, wouldn't want to see them 12 games a year, but I think breaking them out maybe once a year. And they tend to do it for the Duke game now. It seems like I know they did it for State kind of the first time, but
they did it for Duke in 14 on a Thursday night, and they broke them out like 25 minutes before tip off. I remember Ryan Switzer starts tweeting pictures of it from the locker room. They're all excited, and they run out of the tunnel. They're wearing the chromes. But Larry thought, hey, lightning's going to strike twice in the same place, only for us. So they wore it again the next week against NC State, and they got blown out.
Yeah.
And then they had a chrome for the NC State game with Gio's punt return.
Yep.
Well, I think that was a slightly different helmet than this one, though.
Yeah, it is a little bit different. I think that was the first time they ever wore them, too. I
believe it was. Yeah.
I was at that game, too, so I should know.
That was a darker helmet. This is more of a straight-up chrome.
It's more of a Carolina bluish tint chrome to it, but it's more of a chrome. Like I said, it does look sweet. I know when you see pictures of it, it looks really cool. So.
Well, and with the all white, that's a good look. That's a good look for one time.
It is, man. I tweeted it. I said, I'm glad this is the uniform combo I wanted Carolina to wear this weekend. The main reason I'm saying that is because I'm going to be on the field doing pictures. So I just wanted my pictures to look even cooler. So
it always comes back to what we want, right?
Yeah, it's completely selfish. 100%
I'm
selfish.
Okay. And I acknowledge it. And I'm comfortable with that too.
Yeah. Trust me, they can care less what uniforms I want them to wear. They will wear what the heck they want to wear. So, but I'm glad they're wearing these on Saturday. AJ, real quickly, prediction time. I sent my 3 things in on Tuesday this time, a little bit later than usual. I pride myself in getting it in on Monday, but a little bit busy on Monday, so I had to wait till Tuesday. I said 34-24 Carolina. I'm going to stick to that 24 point for Carolina's opponents. I'm going to stick to that after the Miami game. I'm going to say, let's see if I think Carolina's going to keep in that similar range. Wouldn't be surprised if it's 27. I think it'll be at least 24 though. 34-24 win for Carolina. I think it'll be a close game. I know that scoreline's kind of a 10-point win. That was pretty big, but I think it's going to be a close game for most of it. Maybe a little bit late field goal kind of gives Carolina that 10-point lead, and they coast in with that. So that's my prediction for Saturday night.
Yeah, I think Carolina's going to win. I was talking to some guys at basketball media day in Charlotte. They're like, no, Duke's going to win this one. Carolina always loses a game like this. This is setting up classic for Carolina to lose. And I agree historically.
Yeah, historically, yeah.
In Mac's first 3 years, they've had games like this where they just went and like, what the heck?
Mm-hmm.
But I think the vibe's a little different right now. I just have a sense that if that does happen this season, and it might, it's not going to be this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that because they didn't play great last weekend. Like they didn't. They gave up 500 yards, and the offense scored 2 field goals in the second half. They didn't play that good, so it's not like they're coming off the win where they're just pounding their chest. Well, we're awesome. But the staff spent all week saying, "Look at all these boxes, boys. They need to be checked." So that's why I was saying earlier in this podcast, 5-1 and a lot to learn. So I think that's the mission mind this week. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I think they're going to get a little bit better. And if they do get a little bit better, they'll win this game. And I think they'll win the game convincingly enough. So I think in my staff picks, I'm sure I haven't even done them yet. So I'm thinking somewhere in the 40-20 range. I think they're going to win by a few touchdowns.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that happening too. Like I said, I think Carolina's good enough to do that. And like you said, it didn't play great. What'd you say?
Let's remember, I picked Miami last week. So
yeah,
the hell do I?
You did. And like I said, I was close to picking them too. I really thought when you looked at that situation coming off a bye week, 2 losses, new coach, everything, Carolina, still kind of question marks on defense. I thought that was a safe pick too. I predicted them to win. And yeah. So, I mean,
they still got
I wouldn't be surprised if anything really happens. But I do agree with you. I think Carolina's still got a little bit of a chip on its shoulder too. Still not ranked. They're about as close as it can get. I still think this team in some ways still has that feeling of like, I think feel like they may be being slept on a little bit with, looking at their record and how they performed a little bit recently.
Don't give up a gazillion yards and a gazillion first downs if you don't want to be. I mean, if you don't want to be slept, I don't think they're being slept on. I don't think they're being slept on. I think that they have a lot to do before they're worthy of being ranked. I mean, they might be worthy of it after beating Duke. If they beat them soundly, the defense is at least really good in one aspect, like they were the last 2 games, then maybe so.
Yeah, but they were close this week.
It's just good, and they know it. And Mac has brought this up. It's going to take a while for people to get that 63-61 out of their heads, especially App State's lost 3 times.
They're struggling, man, and they should have lost. They should have lost 4 because that. Saw the Hail
quite frankly, other than the Citadel.
Yeah, I'm surprised with how they've been this year. I thought they were a little bit better than that, especially after what I saw in Boone, and then they go and beat A&M.
It just goes to show you that a win. You get a win in college football. It's a great win.
Yeah. Move on to
get
the
a
next
win.
one.
It's a great win.
Yeah.
People get so fixated on trying to apply a value to style points, and style points don't mean anything. The only thing that means anything is the final score.
No, it's
and then try to fix your stuff and move forward.
Yeah, college football is crazy, man. It's just take it 1 week at a time. Don't really, and I don't even. That's why I don't even really like looking at Carolina did this last weekend and Duke did this last weekend, so that it's like it's all a new slate, man. Especially when it's a rivalry game like this. Even more so, is it just kind of a blank slate?
Overall, over time, we learn about teams, obviously, and you can connect some dots. But Middle Tennessee's been routed twice since they beat Miami.
I know, it's crazy. It seems like more often. It seems like this year in particular more than and I'm sure it's not, but more than I remember in recent years. It just seems like there's these upsets, and then you're like, oh, this team's pretty good, and they go get blown out 2 weekends in a row, and it's just like. Well,
and the really weird thing this year is look at the coaching terminations. Look at what those teams have done.
Yeah,
Georgia Tech's 2-0 in a completely different club.
Makes no sense.
Collins is fired. Somebody said to me yesterday in Charlotte, said, don't you think that's an example that team just hated Jeff Collins?
I think so.
I think they completely hated his guts. Mm-hmm. And he's gone. And sometimes you just get a different voice in there. That's why a change is made.
Yeah.
And people say, oh, they shouldn't fire college coaches in the middle of the season. Why not? Mm-hmm. Coaches have a career to coach. These kids have a small window of opportunity. If it's not working, get that guy out of there and get someone in there to give those kids more value to their limited window opportunity experience on the college football field. Scott Frost, he gets fired. They've won twice since he got fired. They won a road game last week.
Won last week.
Arizona State beat Washington. Wisconsin gets rid of Christ, and they go route Northwest on the road. Although I'd be willing to bet you there's something else going on in that Wisconsin situation.
Yeah, that wouldn't be surprising.
He won too much. I don't know if that's a voice issue or if there's some other stuff going on. But look, college football is crazy right now. So Carolina going into Duke, I think a lot of fans would say, well, we got to clobber those guys. Just get a win, get out of there. If you get a win, you're 6-1, 3-0. That's the only thing that matters.
It's literally the only thing that matters, AJ. And I think that's a perfect place to wrap this one up. Yet another episode of the UNC Football Show. Let's do this as we always do, guys. Like the video below if you think Carolina's going to win on Saturday, and go on over to TarHeelIllustrated.com if you are a premium subscriber. If you're not, you can sign up for just $8.33 a month. We'll have a little form for this on our Blue Heaven message boards. Head on over there, put your score predictions in. We'll also throw up our staff picks a little bit later this week is there. So go in there and throw your predictions in there as well. We always like to kind of see and hear how Carolina fans are feeling about it going into the game. But I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Make sure you share this video if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe and make sure you hit the notification bell as well, because we are uploading a ton not only press conferences, but podcasts and football show and 3 things right now. And it's only going to get even more ramped up when basketball season starts here shortly. We appreciate you watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.
Thanks.